Our banking system is sound.
In the past 2 weeks, serious difficulties at a small number of banks have emerged.
These banks are safe.
All depositors' savings in the banking system are safe.
The banking system in the United States is sound and resilient.
Banking system is sound. Banking system is sound. Banking system is sound. Banking system is sound and resilient.
A rough week for the banking industry.
The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, the second biggest bank collapse in U.S. history.
The Silicon Valley Bank collapse is the worst since 2008.
Social Security is structurally sound.
As president, I will not cut one penny from Social Security or Medicare.
There's an imminent disaster waiting. I mean, that's where we're headed.
2 balls, 2 strikes to Bryce Harper. Suarez delivers. Swing and a drive. Left field. It's deep. It's going. Yes! And it is gone. Yes! It is bedlam at the bank as Bryce Harper has put the Phillies on top.
Thank you for tuning in to podcast number 4 of Bogus Banks, Behemoth Bubbles, and Baseball Betting. I'm your host, Chase Goldman, and the 2025 baseball season is now in the history books. We did have a profit this year. It was a very good year for us. We won 31.75 units on the posted record. I do post my plays every morning for free on Twitter at Bogus Banks. It's all lowercase, no spaces, at Bogus Banks. Plus 31.75 units on the posted record. On the spreadsheet record, we did even better. It was up 44.16 units, which is pretty much right in line with expectations based on historical, sampling. So it was a great baseball season. I won a lot of money. I hope I don't lose it all when I go to Vegas and come back with a bunch of losing tickets in college football and the NFL. We will see how that goes. One thing I do want to point out is Will Smith, the catcher for the Dodgers. This little bastard has won 6 World Series championships in a row. 2020, he was with the Dodgers. 2021, he's with the Braves. 2022, he's with the Astros. 2023, he was with the Rangers. And then last year and this year, he was with the Dodgers. That Game 7 on the Dodgers at Toronto Saturday night was absolutely amazing. I had money. I took Dodgers series line, which wasn't obviously part of the posted record or anything. But I just felt like their starting 4 rotation was way better than the Toronto Blue Jays starting rotation, so that's why I made the bet. And I got lucky and won it. So, excuse me. Yeah, it's pretty good season. I got no complaints with it. Made a lot of money. I just hope I don't lose it all back when I go to Vegas and on college football and NFL. One thing I do want to point out is just the utter, and I mean, so during Saturdays all through September, I'm watching baseball. I don't watch any college football. I might pick up one game during the month of September that I'll watch, and then October comes around and all day Saturday I'm watching college football, so I bet on it. And I just want to say that sport is just an absolute, you might as well go to a craps table. I'm convinced you could have a spreadsheet with every single football game ever played on there since 1960 going forward, point spreads, everything. You could have every stat imaginable like I have in baseball, and it wouldn't help you. I think it's a crapshoot. And there's 2 things that absolutely drive me nuts about that stupid sport. Number 1, the tight correlation, 75 to 80% correlation between winning your point spread and winning the turnover stat. Now, if you're a power program like Oklahoma and you're playing a dumpy little program like Texas State or North Texas, you can pretty much assume that Oklahoma is probably going to win the turnover stat on that game, because the power programs, when they're up against those guys, they always do, or they generally do. But that's already baked into that point spread. Vegas knows that. When it's conference play and you've got Tennessee and Alabama playing each other, toss a coin. You don't have any idea who's going to win that turnover stat. Granted, some quarterbacks are more inclined to the interception than others. But Vegas knows that too. That's built in. It's the fumbles really that you can't predict. That's what will turn the game and turn that point spread. But either way, when you're watching a game and you got money on the game and you got the point spread, you see your team throw an interception, you're probably going to lose your bet. Probably going to lose it. And then the other thing that absolutely drives me absolutely insane about that stupid sport is just the amount of judgment calls that go into a 60-minute football game with the officials. You've got, clocks. I've seen them start and stop. Now, they're not following the rules. I've seen them do that a million times over the years. So home field advantage can do a lot with that clock. But then you've also got, the pass interference that wasn't called that should have been, the pass interference that was called that shouldn't have been called, and then the same way with holding. I don't know how many times I've seen a 75-yard touchdown play negated by, this referee dropped a yellow piece of laundry on the field. And so your 75-yard touchdown doesn't count. It's just, you might as well just go to Vegas and throw your money on the craps table is bet on college football or the NFL. It is a joke compared to baseball. Baseball is a very, very pure sport, and it's only going to get better next year. Next year, both teams are going to get 3 challenges on strikes and balls. And I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know if it's the manager that makes the call on hey, we want to challenge that, or, I don't know how they're going to do it. But, in my mind, if a game was going to be thrown in baseball prior to the 2026 season, it would be the home plate umpire, and he would get in an ace pitcher's head early. He would give him a strike zone about as big around as a grapefruit, and there would be no way he'd be able to get anything that's anywhere near that outer square. He's going to get ball on that. Where and I felt like I've seen that happen before, but nothing too terribly blatant. But I do know it goes on. It probably does. There was a drive-by shooting of an umpire in Atlanta about 10 years ago, I'm guessing. And, the money that those guys make, they don't live in neighborhoods that have drive-by shootings. So I got a feeling that was a message, maybe to some other umpires. I don't know. But either way, I would trust my ability to handicap a baseball game 10,000 times more than I would my ability to trust my ability to handicap a college football game. It's just, you could have a spreadsheet that goes from here to the moon with stats and point spreads and everything you want. College quarterbacks, running backs, you could have it all. Weight of the offensive line, defensive line. You could put all that crap in there, and I don't think it would help you win very much in college football. It's just a crapshoot. So that's my rant against that stupid, ridiculous sport. I will admit, generally, if it's a sold-out game like Alabama and Auburn, that's going to be more exciting than your average run-of-the-mill regular season baseball game. But if you compare that to that World Series Game 7, oh my God, that might have been the best World Series of all time. They had Game 3, went 18 innings. It lasted 6 hours and 39 minutes. I went upstairs and laid down and was watching the game on my iPad on the nightstand, and I think I did doze off around inning 16 or 17, but I did wake up to see the end, inning 18. And then Game 7 went 11 innings, which is about perfect. You don't want an 18-inning game. I guess you can, but 11 was, that was just a great game, amazing, and the Dodgers came out on top. So my last podcast was, here I am almost 4 months later. That was recorded back on July 5th. I did have another crisis in my life with my parents and their aging, but that was the entire month of September. I should have recorded another podcast, several of them, since July the 5th. But, when we went over all the macroeconomic things that were going on 4 months ago, they really haven't changed much. Chipotle reported earnings last week, and it was they're just piling up, horrendous economic indicators everywhere you look. But one thing that has been going on over the last, 6 weeks or so, is I have known for a very, very long time that this AI bubble is extremely fraudulent. There's a lot of round tripping, and your customers me. I should rephrase that. NVIDIA's customer is NVIDIA. That shit's been going on for 2 years, and I think Amazon owns like 20% of Anthropic, and Anthropic is Amazon's customer. All this crap that's going on, it's just, it's very fraudulent in my opinion. And now, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, Oracle came out with their earnings report, and they were touting remaining performance obligations, which is just made up fantasy bullshit that they hope they can sell this later on. And the stock went up 20% based on remaining performance obligations. And it's just, I think the bubble is about to pop. I've been thinking that for quite a while, but about 6 weeks ago, the mainstream press, I know the Wall Street Journal ran a story about it, and they were starting to question all of this round tripping. And the round tripping is exactly what we saw back in the Global Crossing days. Global Crossing, WorldCom, Enron, all that disastrous crap, Intelligent, all those startups, CLEX, and, fiber optic companies. I feel like I'm living in April of 2000 right now. Right now, I just feel like I'm. And by the way, just to point this out, the Nasdaq dropped. I think it was 87 or 82% from its high in April of 2000 over the next couple years. If you're trying to retire right now, this is, very serious stuff, because you lose 80% of your life savings being invested in this bubble. Man, I wish you luck, because you're going to be in a shitload of trouble. But the cockroaches started coming out over the last 3 or 4 weeks also. Maybe it's been 4 weeks now. The first and probably the most well-known one was Tricolor. They were double and triple pledging their collateral. In other words, I think they had fake balance sheets. They were going to lenders and saying, I need to borrow money, and here's my collateral, even though the collateral had already been pledged to another lender. I assume they were giving them fake balance sheets, and they were not disclosing that this other lender even existed and that loan even existed. My question is, when you're dealing with those kinds of hundreds of millions of dollars, I would think you'd be like, hey, we want to see all your bank statements for the last, 7 years, 10 years, whatever. Oh, what is this $150 million deposit that came in here? What's that all about? That's where the loan came in from the other guy. And basically, the Tricolor was a lender to undocumented people. In other words, the people that cross the border and come up here looking to mow lawns and that sort of thing. That's what they were pledging their collateral to. And I think I might have hinted about that in the last podcast, because I had a feeling all this deportation was going to cause, I think I mentioned in the last podcast, if you were to deport everyone who's illegal in my hometown of Texas, I think the banks it would be a crisis. I mean, you'd have entire apartment complexes that would go broke and bankrupt, and that would land on a bank's balance sheet somewhere. Well, Tricolor, a lot of their customers that they were financing cars for self-deported and took their cars with them to Mexico. I know my housekeeper, she self-deported over the last year in Texas. And, these cockroaches keep coming up. So we had Tricolor, then First Brands, who's also in the auto sector. They made auto parts. They would sell their auto parts to AutoZone and O'Reilly's, and those companies would not pay them on time. I used to do accounts receivable for IBM, so I know how those big invoices go. They just don't they get paid whenever the customer feels like paying them. And a lot of that's intentional. So they go out and they get these loans and they pledge their accounts receivable as loans. Well, they were double and triple and quadruple pledging their accounts receivable to get loans. So again, was that just a fake balance sheet? Probably so. Carriox Capital just blew up last week or the week before. A guy named Bankum Brombat, Telecom Finance. He was doing the same thing. There's 3 or 4 or 5 of these things that have gone now. But one thing that's really been, well, let me just say, Lox Ganapathy was on a podcast with Melody Wright and Jack Gamble about 2 weeks ago. And she said this double and triple and quadruple pledging of collateral, she said, it's everywhere. And I trust her. I think she's a very smart woman from what I have seen over in these interviews and podcasts, and she doesn't do a whole lot of them. But, if it's everywhere, boy, are these banks, I mean, they're so insolvent right now. They have to be. But, I've been waiting for this signal on this market bubble to this AI bubble to pop. I've been waiting on it because, there's no way I can't invest in this market. There's no way. I'm not investing in this bubble. I mean, you got to be brain dead, in my opinion, to buy the S&P 500. Oh, and by the way, I think if you include Broadcom in the Mag 7, so that would make it the Mag 8. If you were to include Broadcom, I think, now I might be wrong on this, but I think the NASDAQ 100, I believe 69% of the market cap would be the Mag 8. So there's a lot of guys that are, eyeing retirement or maybe in retirement, and they think they're invested in the S&P 500. And yeah, there's this AI bubble going on, but I don't worry about that too much because I'm diversified. I'm all, I think the S&P 500 is literally like 50% weighted towards the Mag 7 right now. It's very close to that. In fact, one day last week, the S&P 500 had 398 stocks out of 500 that finished down in the red on the day, and for the day the index was up because Amazon, because Nvidia, because AI bubble that will never ever ever end. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, it's absolutely insane. This bubble is very close to popping, I believe, but I think I may have stumbled across the Enigma. Now, just for people who don't know what that is, back in World War II, the Germans had a machine. It was called the Enigma, and basically it was a secret code machine. And the United States, maybe the UK, they intercepted it, and they were able to allegedly save 2 years on the war because they were able to intercept these German messages after they got the Enigma. So the Enigma was, it was a secret code, right? I think I got the Enigma. Now, you guys are probably going to think, oh my God, Chase Goldman has completely lost it. I will never listen to another podcast he makes. This guy is a complete and total nutcase. Let me just tell you, I think, I go back and forth on this all the time. All the time. Is the stock market real, or is it just a fake video game with a number on the screen? I wrestle with that question all the time. And this bubble right now, it's really just got me thinking, like, what in the hell is going on? I want to believe the markets are real. I want to believe that whoever they are, and by the way, I know that they exist. I think if you would use your brain, you would also be able to logically conclude that they exist as well, because Biden wasn't making any decisions for 4 years, right? He wasn't calling any shots. He couldn't even talk. But they were still doing government policy, running the government. Now, I don't know who they are, but I got a pretty good idea of who they are. We're going to leave that there for now, but I want to go to something that was very eye-opening on Wednesday after the market closed. Carvana. I have known that this stock is a complete and total utter fraud. I know they're going to be bankrupt. I just don't know when the market wakes up to this reality. The stock has gone from literally $2 to over $400, and now it's back down around $330. And it is a 110% straight up fraud. Now, the Hindenburg Research Group, they put out a short seller report on Carvana. I'm thinking it was a year, maybe 2 years ago. And at the time, I think Carvana might have been like a $30, $40 stock. And it just went straight up to 400 after they put out that report. And this is a very well-respected research firm. Now, they have since closed down because trying to short stocks in this bubble, I think that's why they threw in the towel and they just dismantled. But Carvana has had fake earnings forever. And when they came out with their fake earnings on Wednesday night, instead of the stock going up 20%, it dropped. I think it dropped about 20%. Well, that's never happened before, and I'm scratching my head going, what's going on? And why is the Wall Street Journal and other mainstream financial news sources, why are they finally starting to question this round tripping in the AI bubble? Why? Why are they doing that now? So I wonder if it's like, I do believe that the press is 100% absolutely controlled. I don't believe there's anything free about the mainstream corporate press in the slightest sense of the word. I think it is 100% controlled. So given that, one thing that I've noticed is like, if you sit and watch CNBC for some time, which I've done here a little bit over the last week, I noticed that they will put the Bitcoin price up on the screen literally 20 times as often as they put the gold price up. And then when gold doubled from $2,000 to $4,000 over a 2-year span, the articles started coming out in the financial mainstream press. It's overbought. The bubble is going to pop. Gold's done. It had a nice run, but it's over now. Too bad for gold. It's over. And I get it why the United States government would hate gold, because the dollar replaced gold. So of course they hate gold. They hate it, and they don't want anybody buying it. In fact, from 1933 until 1974, it was illegal for Americans to even own gold. They defaulted in 1971 with the rest of the world, but in 1933, Roosevelt signed an executive order, and all the people were required to turn in all their gold. Now, you were allowed to keep, I think, 5 gold coins, or 5 ounces of bullion and jewelry, but beyond that, it was illegal to hold any. But I think only a lot of dumbasses did turn in their gold, and it wound up in Fort Knox, and then they revalued it from $20.67 an ounce to $35. Look, well, how did that work out? So anyway, the United States government clearly hates gold. They don't want the gold standard because the gold standard keeps the government in check. You can't just print money out of thin air when you're on a gold standard, unless you lie about it like the United States government did until 1971. But yeah, the press is completely 100% controlled. In fact, for the beginning in 2024, all the way through till we got to $4,000 an ounce on gold, gold would hit new all-time highs, almost daily, and CNBC wouldn't ever even mention it. They wouldn't even mention it. But if Bitcoin got anywhere near an all-time high, oh my God, there's an article about it, and they're pumping the shit out of that Bitcoin stuff. And it just, you got to wonder why. What's the agenda here? I think I got it figured out, but that's for another episode. But anyway, back to the mainstream press. I do believe that it is completely 110% absolutely controlled. So why did we start seeing 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, however long it's been, articles questioning this round tripping in the AI bubble? Why? Why now? So then Carvana reported their earnings, and the stock didn't. For the first time ever, the market is questioning Carvana's wonderful earnings. Now we got to realize this is an environment where CarMax and all their peers are, just horrible. It is bad. It's bad everywhere. You've got PrimaLend going bankruptcy, Tricolor going bankrupt, all these lenders to subprime auto, and I believe that's I want to say that's. I forget. It's a huge percentage of Carvana's. So what Carvana does is they borrow massive amounts of money in the public markets, and then what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll loan to subprime car buyers, and then when they get a bunch of those loans, they'll package them up and sell them in the ABS market, the asset-backed securities market. So that's what they're doing. And their market, their entire livelihood depends on that ABS market, and the ABS market ought to be imploding right now with Tricolor and all this double PrimaLend in Dallas. I don't even think they had any issues with double pledging of collateral. Maybe they did, but they went bankrupt. I mean, subprime auto loan defaults are at all-time highs. All-time highs. Auto repossessions are also at all-time highs right now, and you've got Carvana just coming in with these fake numbers, and everything is beautiful and blue skies and sunshine as far as the eye can see at Carvana Wednesday night. That's what they told us, and for the first time ever, the market didn't believe it. So I want to go back, and I just want to give you guys a little bit of history on things that I think I might know that your average Joe probably isn't aware of. Okay, so let's start with, what's a good example? Okay, you're going to shout coincidence as a normie. I call you guys normies. but you guys are going to shout coincidence. The Eyes of Darkness was a book written by Dean Koontz. And if you ever look up this Dean Koontz character, he is a weird-looking dude. He looks like Spock, like weird haircut and everything. But anyway, this guy was a famous author. He wrote a book in 1981 called The Eyes of Darkness. And what it was about was a pandemic that was started because a virus escaped from a bioweapons lab. And this bioweapons lab was in, where do you think? China, right? But what town was it in China? And you can go look this up. I ain't making this up. You can fact check me. The bioweapons lab was located in this 1981 book in Wuhan, China. True story. But not only that, the book was written in 1981, but it was set in a futuristic setting. Can you guess what year this book was written in? Or the setting was? Yeah, it was set in the year 2020. So that kind of shit, I believe that they, whoever they are, their moral code requires them to tell us in advance what they intend to do. And if they put it in a cartoon and we don't pick it up, or they put it in a novel and we don't pick it up, then they have a clean conscience because they told us it was out there. Another part of my overall investment thesis is, well, number one, the World Economic Forum has already told us by 2030 you will own nothing and you'll be happy. But back in the year 2000, there was another episode of The Simpsons. And in this episode of The Simpsons, Lisa Simpson is being inaugurated as the new president. And in her speech, she says, well, thanks to the economic disaster left behind for us by President Trump, how bad is it? And then Milhouse comes in with a chart of a crashing stock market. So, they really threw me for a loop because I didn't envision Trump having split terms. So it's over a 12-year period this has been going on. And I wasn't even paying attention to it during his first term. But yeah, once they started their COVID pandemic, I that's what I thought was going to happen. Anyway, I still think it's going to happen by 2030. I think the United States government, I think anybody with a brain knows that the government is completely bankrupt. And we're just waiting on the stock market to crash, and then we're all poor as hell. But that, coincidence that Trump became the president, and they predicted this 25 years ago? Yeah, that's weird. And, there's a lot of other things like that. I mean, Robin Williams, the night he died, there was an episode of The Family Guy airing in the UK that night where Robin Williams died. So we see this stuff all the time. I know you guys have heard at least some of this. But that, I think they do this on purpose. They do it all the time. So, yeah, another great example of the helicopter or the pre-programming was an episode, a cartoon. It's one of those cartoons like The Simpsons that's made for grown-ups. It's called Chamberlain Heights, and I just Googled it. It was season 1, episode 8, entitled "The End of Days." It was originally aired on November 16th, 2016, 4 years before this happened, or I guess maybe 3. But do you remember the last big news cycle right before we had the COVID? It was Kobe Bryant dying in a helicopter crash, and it got way more press and attention than it probably should have. And in that episode of the cartoon Chamberlain Heights, The Legends of Chamberlain Heights, there was a scene where Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash. And then 2 weeks later, after Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash, we had sincere people on CNBC pounding the table saying we need helicopter money. So, yeah, I think the long-term plan is they're going to crash the money that was helicopter money. The dollar's going to die. So I think it's all planned. I don't know if they plan to replace it with Bitcoin, but I think it's going to go back to a gold standard. But anyway, these things keep happening. Kobe Bryant dies in a helicopter crash in a cartoon in 2016, and then in real life it happens in January of 2020, I believe it was. Might have been late 2019. I don't remember. I do know that it was the last major news cycle before the pandemic started. Another thing, you start looking into 9/11 and all the stuff that went down before that. Back to the Future, there's a whole video about that one. Now, a lot of people will scream, oh, coincidence. They love to scream coincidence. But, there was an episode of The Simpsons, and actually it was season 9, episode 1. Now, in witchcraft, 9 is represents completion or the end of an era, and 1 represents new beginnings, right? So I think that's why they love to do this. It was season 9, episode 1 of The Simpsons. Maggie comes up with a flyer and she holds it up, and it was a bus trip to New York City for $9. And as she's holding this up, it's got the 9 with the dollar sign by it, but then right behind it is the Twin Towers. So when you look at it, it looks like 9/11. Okay, 1963. Let's go back to this one. 1963. It was, I believe Andy Griffith. This would have been airing because remember, when they come out with a new TV series, they come out with them in the fall, or at least they used to. The new shows would come out in the fall. That's when you get your new TV shows, probably because they knew everybody would be home in the winter and able to watch more television, I guess. But this episode would have aired in November, probably about the time that JFK was assassinated, would be my guess. And in that episode, Barney Fife pulls over, I think Goober or Gomer, one of those two characters, and he writes him a ticket, and he's writing him up. He says, I'm going to write you up for a 9/11. And then what do we need the most to get a real investigation into that whole thing right now? What we could really use right now is the citizen's arrest. But in that episode, in 1963, they mocked the citizen's arrest because they had one of the characters running around making fun of Barney, saying, "Citizens arrest! Citizens arrest!" Oh, it was that's who it was. It was Gomer. And so, yeah, the season was season 4 of the Andy Griffith Show, episode 11. So that's why I'm thinking if they started airing these new episodes probably around Labor Day, that would take you to late November, probably very close to November 23rd, which was the day that Kennedy was assassinated. So I think that episode was probably airing about the time that Kennedy was assassinated. Probably that same week would be my guess. Maybe even that same day. I don't know. But it was season 4, episode 11. If you go back, if you're old enough to remember how you used to look up the phone number for somebody, you would dial information. And you would dial 411. And then, of course, they came out later on with if you need an emergency and you need the police or fire department, you dial 911, right? Wow, what a coincidence. So you got season 4, episode 11, and then you dial 911 for an emergency. I don't know if they think maybe somehow that puts it in a subliminal subconscious. It's an emergency. I don't know what they're doing. But the number of things that go back on that particular day, oh my God, it just goes on forever. It was in the movies. I can't think of any super great examples, but I'm going to put, when I post this on Twitter, I'm going to reply to this post, and I'm going to put another video from another YouTube channel I have with this little short, I think it's about a 14-minute video that explains how The Walk, which came out, I think it was 30 years after Back to the Future. And you have to watch that video. Now, I've already shown that to some of my friends, and they just scream coincidence. That's all they're capable of doing. It's amazing. But no, there's way too much coincidence going on for all of this to be coincidence. I do believe that they have to tell us in advance what their plans are. So, who is they? I don't know who they are. Honest to God, I really don't. But I do believe that a huge part of it is, I don't want to use this word. I don't want to get YouTube all over me, even though I only have 4 podcasts and 23 listens. Let's see. We're going to call this OJ, orange juice. Okay? It was the orange juice. OJ. We're just going to call that OJ. If you can't figure that out, I feel bad for you. But that's, it's been all over Twitter. If you're paying attention over there, I mean, you can't help but see it. I mean, there's no avoiding it. It is amazing. And pretty much the entire cast of CNBC is OJ. Okay? All of them. Steve Leisman, David Faber, Jim Cramer, Andrew Ross Sorkin. I do believe that I don't know, they might not even be in on it, but maybe they're being directed by somebody at a higher level that is telling them what to do. But anyway, my whole entire conspiracy theory is that Andrew Ross Sorkin, who again is a member of Team OJ, right? Totally OJ. If you look at his kid up there on stage with him, looks like Howard Stern. Okay, and it's amazing how many famous names we know that are members of the OJ clan. Okay, but anyway, he wrote a book. It's got a red cover, and it's about a 1929 stock market crash. So Tuesday morning, Andrew Ross Sorkin got to ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, and behind him was a giant, huge picture of his book, and it says the 1929 stock market crash. So he rings the bell on Tuesday morning. That would have been October the 28th. And the Dow closed at a new all-time high that day. The next day, the Nasdaq and S&P both closed at new all-time highs. And very new into this trade, but I'm betting big on it. I think I've intercepted a coded message that was intended for a bunch of OJ elites, and me being just an ordinary goy, I've intercepted it. I got the enigma, I think. So it was Wednesday night that Carvana reported earnings, and the market's questioning these earnings. 6 weeks ago, the mainstream press started slowly acclimating the population to, hey, maybe this is another global crossing, round-tripping, Enron type, what's going on here? They started questioning this whole AI narrative. And, one thing I do want to point out while I'm talking about the AI bubble is it was Oracle. Oracle came out, and let me check my notes. What did they call this thing? Oh, it was remaining performance obligations. And, that's just like OpenAI basically has pledged to spend $1.4 trillion, that's with a T, trillion dollars on AI stuff between now and 2030. $1.4 trillion. Do you know OpenAI's revenue is like 12 to 13 billion with a B over the last 12 months? And they're propping up this whole entire, them and Anthropic, and if you start looking into this AI crap, everybody's coming up with profits. None of them are coming up with cash flow, but they're all coming up with profits. But if you could analyze Anthropic, which is not publicly traded on a stock market, and OpenAI, these companies are bleeding cash. They're just a disaster as far as I'm concerned. This is so .com all over again. But anyway, let's go back to the New York Stock Exchange. Andrew Ross Sorkin, Mr. OJ, goes out there and rings that opening bell in front of a stock market crash sign. And I think it's a signal. Now, I'm betting on it, but the beautiful part about this is I've got unlimited upside if I'm right. And if I'm wrong, as soon as the Dow hits a new all-time high, closing high, I'll cover my short. And I'm out. But I think I might have picked something up on that. So I will give them a week. I decided, today it looked like maybe the Dow was going to wind up hitting a new all-time high this morning in the pre-market. But it turned around at the open, and everything in the Dow was red, except for like 4 or 5 stocks today. So it did finish down 250 points. So it's got I think it's about 350 points below last Tuesday, a week ago, all-time closing high. So I'm watching that like a hawk, and I am really, really leveraged on this thing right now. So I'm betting big. I'm betting really big, because if I'm right, I'm going to make millions, maybe tens of millions of dollars on this thing. And if I'm wrong, I'll lose a little bit, maybe a few $1,000s. But I will give them until, because I can see totally them like, okay, let's do this. Let's have them all hit a new all-time high exactly 7 days, 1 week after Sorkin rings the opening bell. So if they hit a new all-time high tomorrow, I'll hold through Wednesday's close and see how it goes. But if Wednesday's close is another new all-time high, I'm definitely out. That's pretty much my plan. So I can't lose very much on this trade, but I think this bubble's going to pop, and I think it's all controlled, and I think the stock market might be completely, totally, just freaking fake. Just a video game, number on a screen. It's always bothered me. No one's ever been able to give me a coherent explanation. How do market makers make money? Wait a minute. So you're telling me when Enron's imploding, they're there to buy? They'll buy your shares? What? It makes no sense to me. I mean, I get that. Okay, they're making a little commission between the spread, the bid and the ask. Okay, whatever. All this trading volume every single day, somebody is buying and selling 5 million shares of IBM every single day of the week. It doesn't pass the smell test to me that you can have a stock and just because you put it on the stock market now, everybody wants to buy and sell it. Nobody wanted to buy it before, or maybe they did. Maybe when it was private, people that wanted to buy it couldn't because it was private. But it's a hard story for me to believe. I think my gut feel is this trading volume on the stock market is completely fake. How they do it, I don't know. Maybe 3 banks get together. And I've always said if you can control the volume, you can control the price. So maybe 3 banks get together and they sell 100 shares of stock ABC from Bank A to Bank B for $100. And then Bank B sells it to Bank C for $100.05. And then Bank C sells it back to Bank A, and they bring it up to $100.06. Then they move it back over to Bank B. Just back and forth between themselves. But ultimately, there's nothing to be made. But collectively, the banks can't make any money on it. They're just trading amongst themselves all day long with this fake trading volume. That's what I think, anyway. So we're going to see how that goes. You guys can call me nuts, but there's a lot of other examples. Going back to the big event with the Hook, let's call it. I'll just say it. I don't think they're going to get me. I don't have any followers. Sandy Hook. Maybe a month or 2 before that happened, maybe 3, there was a movie that came out, a Batman movie, and they were showing a map, and lo and behold, there was a Sandy Hook on that map before the actual event happened. And then when you start analyzing that whole story, I mean, my God, it's a joke. I'm to the point now where I can tell when I'm being lied to. I don't have to investigate it and dig and try to research and prove to anybody. I can just see something like Butler or Charlie Kirk, and I know instantly I'm being lied to. I've seen enough. That's all I needed to know. There's several elements of the story that don't make sense. We're being lied to again, which happens all the time. I don't know how they do it. Don't ask me how they do it. I've never understood how they're able to carry this out. But I know it happens, and I know it happens a lot. And it definitely happened with JFK. It definitely happened with Apollo. It definitely happened with 9/11. It definitely happened with Sandy Hook. It's happened with a lot of different events, and certainly Butler, 10/7, Charlie Kirk. And that's one thing that's really weird about all this. When the pandemic was going on, I could see that the conservatives were seeing right through this. They're like, wait a minute, you want me to comply with all this tyranny? And they could see through it. And then they also, when it came to the vaccine, they could see right through that. But then, when 10/7 happened and Butler happened, and now Charlie Kirk, it's the right that can't see any of it. The left can see a lot of that. They see a whole lot of that, but the right can't see it. So I don't know how they engineer this so that they've got the 2 populations. It's absolutely amazing. They're good at what they do. Let's say that. But anyway, that's where I'm at. That's our podcast for today. I am extremely short these markets right now, and long miners, gold miners. And I'm just going to see how this plays out between now and Wednesday's close. And hopefully I'll get a little bit more breathing room on the downside of the Dow starting tomorrow. But I did short NASDAQ. I didn't short the Dow because I think there's a lot more downside to this. Although they're both heavily weighted towards the other. But anyway, that's it for tonight. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back with podcast number 5 very soon. Thank you for listening.